Hi guys, welcome to Yesterday's Coffee, the podcast where we chat about fitness, nutrition, and business all over coffee that may or may not have been brewed yesterday. And today we are chatting about a study that is not new, but I think has just kind of blown up a little bit in the media. Not even like mainstream
media. Well, you're the one that found out about this.
Yeah, so I had a couple fitness people that I follow post about it, and then I had an old coworker send me a message about it. I had Deborah send me a message about it.
Shout out to Deborah.
Shout out to Deborah. So Deborah, this one's for you. So a lot of people have been talking about it recently, even though the study came out in 2017, which I'm actually so surprised that it hasn't been picked up by the media, because it essentially is positive for like a really big myth that a lot of us have talked against for years and years and years, which is spot reduction. So
losing body fat in one particular specific area of your body.
So, when we tell you not to do crunches because it's not going to help you lose belly fat.
Well, I don't think we ever said don't do crunches.
No, but I mean, just for the purpose of losing body fat in a specific area.
Right.
A lot of people in the fitness industry have been calling that a myth forever, basically, based on a lot of old research and old studies that found no differences when subjects trained one area of their body, found no differences in fat lost.
Right.
But a lot of those studies had a lot of drawbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think in a few of them, the participants didn't even lose weight.
Yeah. So, problem number one, if we're judging to see if you're losing fat in a specific area, you have to lose fat first.
Right.
One of them was about tennis players judging their playing hand and their offhand against each other. But again, these are seasoned athletes, and I think that was one of the groups that also didn't lose weight or there was no change in weight.
One of the old studies that stuck out to me that this kind of article referenced were these overweight, untrained women that started doing like a few ab exercises each day, in addition to, I don't even think they were necessarily doing anything else. And it was like they didn't lose any weight, but you're trying to compare weight lost across
wasn't
groups.
That so? In one of those other studies, though, the ab one, they did see a difference. Correct?
Yeah, there were. So there were a few studies.
So there is a review of all of the studies on spot reduction that we reviewed that we'll be referencing.
Yeah, so is this one.
And there were two studies out of all the studies that have been done on this subject that are worth talking about, that do show some sort of difference, some sort of evidence potentially of spot reduction, and one of them was on those women who had no prior training experience, started training their abs, and did see overall weight loss, obviously from just like starting a fitness routine, and a very, very, very small difference in fat lost in their midsection compared to fat lost on the rest of their body.
Right.
But we're talking like millimeters. So again, not enough to reveal your abs, but still shows positively for the fact that we might be able to control this more so than we thought we could.
Right. I think more than anything, looking at this article kind of, because I'd never really dove into like the specific research
on the subject.
Studies on like actual spot reduction. Sure. I'd kind of perused through like general findings and what people have derived from it.
It's been taught in textbooks and courses that it's a myth, that it's a lie. You know what I mean? This is just like generally accepted as being the truth.
So what I was saying is I'd never actually read these studies before. And so you look at the actual studies themselves, and as soon as you look at them, you're like, well, this doesn't really tell me anything.
Yeah.
So why has this kind of been like the gold standard? Because none of the studies up until like a few that were done in like 2011 and 2015 even really warranted attention. And instead they were kind of like the basis for why spot reduction shouldn't be a thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I just found that interesting.
Your watch is recording everything you're saying. I just wanted to know.
Oh, that's really cool.
I just wanted to let you know that. We're taking notes. So anyway, this study is what we wanted to review today, because this study that was done, that was published in 2017, again, don't know why more people aren't talking about it more aggressively, because it was a really great study.
I mean, I never heard of it.
It's
you were the one that found it.
Well, I know. Yeah, I know. And I'm glad that I did, because it was very well done, right? They controlled all of the variables. We'll dive in deeper, but they controlled all of the variables. They carried everything out very well. Obviously, the one drawback is it's a very small sample size. It was only done in one small group of people. Only 16 people, I think, completed the program.
I think it was just women, too.
It was just women. So, there are some drawbacks, but with the sample size that they had, they did everything else very, very well.
Yeah.
Okay. So they took 16 women who were all untrained, so no previous workout routine or really much workout experience.
Mm-hmm.
They all put them on a basically the same diet, so within a very narrow range of calories.
Right, and I think it was balanced based on their weight.
Okay.
Correct?
Yes. So their weight was taken into account. They were all roughly within the same average weight.
So they were shooting for the same caloric deficit.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes, they were creating the same caloric deficit in every woman. What they did was they did a lot of testing at the very beginning to find their maxes for strength training and to identify their VO2 max, so their cardio ability.
Right.
Basically. And so they were targeting the same intensity using those two metrics, woman to woman, between the strength training and the cardio training programs that they were doing.
Right. So if you've got woman A and woman B, they're not necessarily eating the exact same amount of calories or lifting the same amount of weight or doing the same amount of cardio or the same resistance of cardio, but relative to their maxes that they previously tested, they were all at, I think, 70% is what they were, something like that.
Yeah, so their percentage of effort
max effort
should have been the same across the board,
right.
Basically. So they had these women go through a 12-week program. It's 12 weeks. It was a set personal training routine or strength training routine. They were asked to, or they were instructed in person, right? So they didn't give these women like a plan to follow on their own outside of their facility. They completed, was it 2 workouts per week?
That I don't remember. And I think it was only 8 weeks.
8 weeks? Oh,
yeah.
I thought it was 12.
8-week training program.
Oh, just kidding. Okay, sorry. So 8-week training program, but they completed half their workouts in a laboratory setting and half their workouts in a gym where they were being instructed on the exercises. So they were being very controlled in the way that they were performing. Right. So they would do their strength training however many days a week, followed by 30 minutes of cardio at their given percentage.
Right.
So do you want to talk about what they found?
Well, so the part that we kind of glossed over there is the 2 groups. So
duh. That's important.
So the actual study itself, what they're looking at is they have these 16 women. They're putting them through this 8-week training program. They're keeping their caloric deficit the same. They're both doing strength training and they're both doing cardio, but one group, so 8 of the women, were just doing strength training for their upper body, and then the other 8 women were doing strength training for their lower body.
Yes.
So they go through this process, the 8 weeks. They all end up losing weight. And what the study found is that the women that were training their upper bodies lost more body fat in their upper limbs, and the women that were only resistance training their lower bodies lost more body fat in their lower limbs. And the rationale behind this result, which intuitively makes sense, is that if you are training a particular muscle and it requires fuel, it's going to pull localized fuel from around that muscle tissue. And with exercise comes heat. And so heat around that muscle site that's being trained is what's going to help basically free up fat that's stored around that muscle tissue. And then by combining the resistance training with endurance training, cardio afterwards, you're actually able to then utilize that stored body fat that's been freed up
that you've released
and burn it off. Because that's something we should note, is that some of the other studies that were looked at that were just resistance training didn't show any net benefit in fat loss across different training populations. And that's primarily because even though they were using resistance training in those particular muscle groups, if you don't have a way to burn off the fat that you free up, it just gets restored.
Exactly.
So that's where the cardio is so important.
Yeah. So it was the keys of this, study were that they were doing strength training followed by cardio, generating heat in that area, releasing the fat, and burning it off as fuel.
Right.
So
let's talk about some limitations, unless you had something else you want to bring up.
I just had it, and then I think it left me.
So
go ahead and talk about I'll think of it.
One of the things that, so overall the study was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest missing piece would have been having a group that was training both.
That's what I was going to bring up, yeah.
And lower body, just to see differences overall. So obviously, there aren't too many instances other than injury where you would ever be just training your upper body or just training your lower body. And so what I would really like to see is keep these same constraints, add a third group that's achieving the same caloric deficit, but they're training both, they're resistance training both their upper and lower body, and then cross compare that to the other groups to see if there's really a major difference or even like a total effect to it versus just kind of the localized. Because the localized fat loss does make sense because if you're obviously working out in a particular area and you're just training your legs, it makes sense that the stored fat around that area is going to be preferentially used first, right?
Yeah, I agree. A third group would be interesting. I also think it would be interesting to see a study similar to this, but where maybe just an extra day was added. So instead of there necessarily being a third group, or there still could be, but having the participants actually train both upper and lower body, but spend one extra day on upper or lower body. Does that make sense?
Say it again.
So if you have those two groups of women, they're training total body,
right,
but one group spends one extra day training just upper body.
Opposite or just upper?
Just upper, and the other group spends one day only training lower. So basically showing if you have like a problem area,
I see what you're saying.
Like can you really like spend extra time on a certain body part and see more loss there?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Because obviously in a balanced training program, you're going to be training everything.
Yeah, you train everything every day, so you wouldn't see a huge difference in one body part. It would be just based on your genetics.
Right. So it would be really interesting to see just how much of an effect you're going to get from that. And do you remember what the significance was of the difference in weight that they lost? If you, I don't know, look at that chart. But overall, I don't think that the study is necessarily pointing towards this massive effect. Like if you just start training your abs a lot more and you're doing a lot more crunches, you're not just suddenly going to lose all your belly fat, but you might lose a couple percentage points more. And maybe it is more
the percentage
significant than that.
Of fat mass.
All right, so looking over the numbers, it looks like the groups lost, what did you just say, 2 to 7 pounds?
2 to 7 pounds.
Over the 8 weeks.
Well, for the upper body group.
Right.
And then 3 to 8 pounds in the lower body
roughly
group.
3 to 8 pounds for the lower group.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they lost a little bit of weight in that time frame, and the actual specific amount of weight loss in the upper body group, they dropped on average 0.3 kilos. So we're looking at maybe like roughly 0.6 to 1 pound of body fat in their upper limbs, and pretty much the same thing in their lower limbs. It says that they lost slightly more body fat in their upper versus lower. So we'll say they lost a pound in their upper body and maybe 2/3 of a pound in their lower body.
Yeah, the upper body group was a very, very slight difference compared to the lower body only
very
group.
Small. So the lower body group is where the real significance was. So they ended up losing on average 1.3 kilos. So we're looking at 3 pounds plus or minus 1 to 2 pounds. So maybe 3 to 5 pounds of fat loss just in their lower body. Whereas they barely lost anything in their upper body. So there is a significant difference there.
Mm-hmm.
And so really what this is going to say overall is we're talking about very minute details for the most part. Because if you're training your body overall and you've got a balanced program going on, you're going to be hitting everything. And sure, if you've got a little bit more volume in one body part versus another.
We already know that that's beneficial for you.
Right.
So
that could influence this to a little bit, but it's not going to make or break your progress. Like if you just start throwing 18 different ab exercises into your program, you're not going to get a six-pack 10 times faster.
No. It's not going to speed your progress that much, but I don't think, when we're talking about doing a little experimenting with yourself, none of this would hurt you in any way. So
right.
If you had the time and were able to try something like this out and wanted to spend a little extra time or put a little bit more volume in a certain body part, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
I think a real world takeaway from this would be if you are trying to lose belly fat specifically, then doing your ab work right before you do your cardio is a good idea.
Sure. Or, any of your other body parts. Or maybe spending an extra 10 to 15 minutes on a certain body part before you go into your cardio.
Right. So whatever body part you're trying to really maximize, make sure it's trained before,
like directly before
doing some cardio,
your cardio.
And that will give you a much more advantageous environment to burn that fat off that you wake up.
Keeping your cardio and your strength training together. How some people will split up their training and do like cardio in the morning and then they'll do strength training later. I think to make the most out of this type of situation, doing them back to back is crucial.
Yeah. So from a pure fat loss perspective, resistance training immediately followed with cardio is ideal.
Yeah. So for all those people that want to wake up and do fasted cardio but don't train until after work, you can maybe switch it up.
Yeah. But again, it's not going to make or break anything.
No, but again, these are very small differences. Yeah. However, it doesn't hurt. Again, if you have the resources, if you're able to try it out, why not do it? Yeah. And if you have really good results, maybe just let us know and we'll...
Well, and splitting your resistance training and cardio is actually a good thing to do too, just because you come that much more fresh to each session. So it could be argued that you could push harder in the cardio workout and therefore burn more fat overall if it's split up. So again,
maybe, yeah.
So I wouldn't let this necessarily overhaul your training, but like we said, real world takeaway: if you've got a target body part you're trying to lean out, make that be the last thing you train right before your cardio. Get that area warmed up.
Yeah, do a couple extra sets.
Yeah,
couple, an extra exercise. Yeah,
absolutely. So
awesome.
You got it.
Sorry, I thought you were going to do it. We both took the inhale. Well, thank you guys so much for watching today. If you have any topics that you would like us to cover, you can reach out to me at therootedrd.com or Kyle at hypertrofit.com. But we will see you next week.
See you guys next week.